Hey, what is up guys? It's Simbucky here. How are you guys doing? As always, I hope you guys are doing well. In this video, I'm going to be going over the new recently announced iPhone 5S and the iPhone 5C. I'm going to be going over the specs for each phone and the differences between the two, as well as the upgrades between this year's iPhone 5S and last year's iPhone 5. Also, hopefully through this video, I can help you guys decide which model is right for you. So before I get into it, just a quick little background about me and phone operating systems and stuff like that between Android and iPhone. When iPhone first came out several years ago, I was one of the first people to pick up an iPhone, and at that time I absolutely loved it. I thought it was one of the greatest things out there. I definitely loved the phone, and I definitely loved the iOS software that came with it. It was very simplistic, and no matter who you were, you could pretty much do anything you wanted to without having to read the manual or look for how-tos. It was very simple and very basic, and that's something that Apple has stuck around with ever since then. So I had the iPhone when it first came out, and I loved it, and I kind of stuck with it for quite some time. But a couple years later, Google and HTC collaborated to bring the Nexus 1, the very first Nexus branded phone. And for those of you who don't know what the Nexus brand is for Google, it's basically phones that are made specifically for Android that run pure vanilla Android. And for those of you who don't know what that is, pure vanilla is basically just the Android operating system itself. With phones nowadays like the HTC One or the Samsung Galaxy S3 and S4, they have Samsung and HTC's overlay software on top of that. So you guys are getting Android mixed with different software. But pure vanilla, such as the Nexus brands, are strictly Android, and they don't have any other software on top of it. And so when that phone came out, the Nexus One, I ditched the iPhone and picked up that, and ever since then I've been a complete Android fan, and I've stuck with them ever since, owning several different Android phones. And now I currently own the HTC 4G Evo LTE, and I absolutely love it. I'm in love with Android. I think that it is the greatest mobile operating system out there. So just to give you guys a heads up, in this video I might be talking about the iPhone and iOS, and not the greatest light. So some of you might wonder, am I biased towards Android? And I am a little bit, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to try to stay as neutral as I can. But that's a little bit of background about me and Android and iPhone. I definitely like Android, and I think it's the better of the two. But let's go into it, into the breakdown. So a few days ago, Apple had a keynote and they announced the iPhone 5S and 5C. Now the iPhone 5S has their newly integrated A7 processing chip with a 64-bit architecture. For those of you who are familiar with computers, most computers nowadays use that 64-bit architecture, as it gives a little bit more rendering and a little bit better power to that device. Also, for the iPhone 5S, they're incorporating something called their M7 motion coprocessor. Now, this is a chip that's going to make it much easier for motion on the phone. It's much more highly detected, so you can do cooler things with it as opposed to previous iPhones, and it's much more sensitive. So you don't have to really tilt the phone for it to realize you're tilting it. Just a slight tilt and it'll realize what you're doing. Also, something new to the iPhone 5S is that they're bringing a fingerprint sensor, which is going to be on the home button. So this way, rather than if your friend takes your phone and he's able to get into it, with the fingerprint sensor, it'll only figure out and unlock if it's you, the owner of the phone. So that's something that I'm actually very impressed that Apple decided to come out with. I was very surprised with that, but it seems like hopefully they'll be able to integrate it nicely into the phone, and that people can use it justly. Also, this is sticking with the iPhone 5S and 5C are both going to stick with the iPhone 5's 4-inch Retina display, coming in with 326 ppi or pixels per inch. As for the camera, it's going to have an 8 megapixel camera, an upgraded 2.2 aperture, auto image stabilization, and burst mode, which is only going to be for the iPhone 5S. Also, they're going to come with something called slow motion video, and it'll be able to record in 1080p. The slow motion video and burst mode are strictly for the iPhone 5S and cannot be found anywhere else. Going to the iPhone 5C, which is the much cheaper of the two, I guess C stands for cheaper, it's going to be running last year's A6 chip. Again, it does have a 4-inch Retina display at 326 ppi. As for the camera, it has a same 8 megapixel camera, but it has the old 2.4 aperture, and they both can record up to 1080p. Now, the differences between the camera are that the iPhone 5S is going to be much more delicate, and it can take much better pictures as compared to the iPhone 5C and last year's iPhone 5. Also, the differences between the two phones are that the iPhone 5S will carry the new upgraded A7 with the 64-bit architecture. Now, for those of you who are into gaming and you guys love to play games on your phone, you kind of use your phone as a mini console or a mobile console similar to Nintendo 3DS or PS Vita or something like that, then the iPhone 5S is for you. With its upgraded processor and the M7 coprocessor, as well as the 64-bit architecture, you're going to have much more advanced game rendering and overall a faster and smoother rendering. So when you're playing these games, it's going to be much smoother and much quicker than if you were to play it on the iPhone 5C or last year's iPhone 5. For those of you who want the latest and greatest from Apple, but might not be able to pay as much, then the iPhone 5C is for you. Now, I'm going to quickly go over something new that is going to come with both of these phones at launch, which is iOS 7, which is releasing on September 18th for those of you with an iPhone 5 or an iPod Touch 5 like myself. Now, Apple is saying that that iOS 7 is the biggest update since the first iPhone a few years ago. Now, the reason this is because when the first iPhone came out, this was following in Steve Jobs' view of what an operating system should be like. However, since his passing a few years ago, the people that have come into the position, especially the one that is now in charge of iOS, has taken it in a different view and a different path than what Steve Jobs would have taken it in. And this has led to the new upgraded iOS 7. Now, iOS 7 is going to be much smoother than any other previous iOS. Also, in my opinion, it's basically complexity made simple. For those of you who are familiar with Apple and iOS, you'll know that iOS is a very simplistic operating system. But iOS 7 is bringing more complex applications into the mix, but at the same time keeping it very simple, which is something I'm very impressed about with Apple. Up until now, Android has been the much more complex of the two operating systems, and still to this day, even with iOS 7, you can do much more with Android than you can in iOS. But iOS 7 is taking it to the next level for Apple, and I'm very impressed with their operating system. But that pretty much does it, guys. Just to wrap up and summarize what I've been saying, the iPhone 5S is this year's main upgrade to the iPhone line. It includes the A7 processor with a 64-bit architecture, which is going to make the iPhone 5S much more powerful than its predecessor. Also, it is going to come included with the M7 Motion coprocessor and a fingerprint scanner, as well as an updated camera and camera application. Next is the iPhone 5C, which is the cheaper of the two, mainly because it is made up all of plastic, as compared to iPhone 5S and iPhone 5, which isn't made up of glass. iPhone 5C includes the same specs as last year's current iPhone 5. Also, to come with both of these phones at launch is iOS 7, which is said to be the biggest update since the first iPhone. It's going to be a much smoother operating system, and in my opinion, it is basically complexity made simple for iOS. That pretty much does it for the video, guys. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please like, favorite, and subscribe, and also share my channel with all of your friends. It really helps me out, and it really helps out my channel. But that pretty much does it. In the comment section down below, please let me know what type of operating systems do you guys like? Do you guys like iOS? Or are you like me and do you guys like Android? Or are you one of the very few people out there who like Windows? Please let me know in the comment section down below, guys. I'm curious as to what you guys think about these mobile operating systems. But that does it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you guys in my next video. Until then, take it easy, guys. Peace.